You pick up a pair of scissors and something feels wrong. The blades won't cut where you want them to. Your hand cramps before the page is even halfway through. You blame the scissors. You blame yourself. But the real answer is far stranger than a manufacturing mistake. Somewhere on the planet right now, about 1 in 10 people are fighting that exact same battle. Doorknobs that twist the wrong way. School desks built for a hand they don't have. Spiral notebooks that jam against the wrist with every sentence. For thousands of years, the world has been built around one hand. And for just as long, a small, stubborn minority has refused to disappear. This is the story of why. Start with a number that should not exist. Roughly 10% of humans are left-handed. Not 9, not 11, 10. And here's the strange part. That number barely moves. Look at cave paintings in France and Spain. Some more than 25,000 years old. Researchers studying the hand stencils blown onto rock walls in red and black ochre found left-hand outlines appearing at almost the same rate they appear today. Look at Roman writings. Look at medieval guild records. The ratio holds. Generation after generation, civilization after civilization, roughly 1 in 10 hands favor the left. Why would evolution allow that? If being right-handed gave a clear survival edge, you would expect left-handedness to fade out completely over thousands of generations, the way a disadvantageous trait usually does. It hasn't. It has held at almost exactly the same percentage since long before written history. That kind of stability is rare in biology. It usually means something deeper is keeping the trait alive. The evidence goes back even further than cave paintings. Anthropologist David Freyer spent years examining the front teeth of Neanderthal skulls, looking for tiny scratch marks left behind when a Neanderthal gripped meat or hide in their teeth and sliced toward their own mouth with a stone tool. The angle of those scratches reveals which hand held the blade. Freyer's research found the same right-hand bias showing up in Neanderthals, our extinct evolutionary cousins, tens of thousands of years before modern humans even existed. Whatever is driving this pattern, it isn't new, it isn't cultural, it's ancient. Psychologist Chris McManus, who spent decades studying handedness at University College London, found that the trait is partly written into your genes, but not in a simple way. There isn't one gene that decides which hand you favor. Instead, McManus identified a more complicated genetic switch, one that doesn't guarantee right or left, but instead leaves the outcome partly to chance during brain development. Most of the time, that coin flip lands on the right hand. Sometimes, it doesn't. And evolution, it turns out, may have wanted it that way. To understand why, you have to go back to the moment your ancestors first stood upright and started throwing things. Throwing a spear with accuracy takes more than arm strength. It takes a brain that can plan, sequence, and time a complex motor task in a fraction of a second. Researchers studying the evolution of language have noticed something curious. The same hemisphere of your brain that controls fine motor planning, the left hemisphere for most people, is also the hemisphere that controls language. Some scientists believe these two abilities evolved tangled together. As your ancestors got better at throwing and tool making with their right hands, the left side of their brains may have quietly been recruited for something else entirely: speech. That would explain why most humans favor the right hand. What it doesn't explain is why some humans never did. This is where the story turns strange. In 2004, French researchers Charlotte Fourie and Michel Raymond proposed an idea now known as the fighting hypothesis. It was simple and a little unsettling. In a world where people occasionally had to fight, whether against rival groups, predators, or each other, being left-handed gave you a hidden advantage. Right-handed fighters spend their whole lives sparring against other right-handers. Their instincts, their footwork, their timing, all of it calibrated for an opponent who moves like they do. A left-handed opponent breaks that pattern completely. Every strike comes from an unfamiliar angle. Every block lands a half-second too late. Fourie and Raymond tested this idea by comparing societies with different levels of interpersonal violence. What they found was striking. In groups with higher rates of physical conflict, left-handedness showed up more often. The more violent the environment, the more lefties survived to pass on their genes. But here's the twist that makes this more than just lefties winning fights. If left-handedness ever became too common, the advantage would vanish on its own. The entire edge depends on rarity. The moment half the population fights left-handed, right-handers adjust their training, and the surprise disappears. So natural selection never pushed left-handedness toward zero, and it never pushed it toward 50% either. It settled somewhere in between, a permanent minority, just rare enough to stay dangerous. Mathematicians have a name for this kind of standoff: negative frequency-dependent selection. In plain terms, it means a trait becomes more valuable the rarer it gets, and less valuable the more common it becomes. In 2007, applied mathematician Daniel Abrams, working with Mark Kalman at Northwestern University, built a model predicting exactly how common left-handedness should be in a species, based purely on the balance between cooperation and competition in that species' way of life. Their model landed almost exactly on the real-world number, around 10%. Pause on that for a second. Two mathematicians, working from pure equations about cooperation and conflict, predicted the actual rate of left-handedness in living humans almost to the decimal point. You can still watch the fighting hypothesis play out today, just in a different arena. Scan any list of elite boxers, fencers, or tennis players, and left-handers show up far more often than their 10% share of the population would predict. Coaches have a name for it: the southpaw advantage. The opponent across from them has trained against right-handers their entire career. The lefty in front of them moves like a puzzle they've never had to solve. Outside the ring, though, life tells a very different story. For most of human history, left-handedness wasn't celebrated. It was suppressed. The bias is even built into language itself. The Latin word for left is sinister. The French word for left, gauche, also means clumsy or socially awkward. In English, calling something right still means calling it correct. None of that is an accident. It's centuries of quiet preference, baked directly into the words people use without ever stopping to ask why. That preference had real consequences. Children were forced to switch hands in classrooms well into the 20th century. Their natural hand sometimes physically restrained so the correct one could take over. Tools, instruments, even the design of a simple handshake carry a quiet right-hand assumption almost nobody questions, because the world was built by the majority, for the majority. So the trait that may have once given your ancestors an edge in a fight became, in everyday modern life, a minor daily inconvenience. The scissors still don't fit. The desk still crowd the elbow. But underneath that friction sits a genetic story that survived ice ages, migrations, and tens of thousands of years of selection pressure, because somewhere back in that bloodline, being unpredictable mattered more than being comfortable. Here's the part that should really sit with you. Your hand preference was decided before you had any say in it. Somewhere in the genetic lottery, McManus spent his career mapping out, shaped by pressures your ancestors faced long before scissors, before school desks, before anyone ever called left wrong. You didn't choose your dominant hand any more than you chose your eye color. And yet that choice, made by evolution rather than by you, still nudges your daily life in ways most people never stop to notice. Next time you watch a left-handed boxer slip a punch nobody saw coming, you're not just watching athletic skill. You're watching frequency-dependent selection still playing out in real time, under bright lights, in front of a crowd. The same logic that once played out with sharpened stone and unpredictable strikes. And the next time those scissors don't quite fit your hand, remember this: that's not the world overlooking you. That's the echo of an advantage your ancestors fought, generation after generation, to keep rare.